but it's not the Biden policy. And we find that a lot with this administration. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about the law. It's about the policy. Honestly, Jen Psaki is the most straight-faced liar I have ever seen in my life. This administration lied about COVID coming from the lab. They lied about masks. They didn't work, and then they did work. Then you need 3. They lied about white supremacy being the greatest domestic threat in the country. They lied about January 6th. Is Build Back Better code for Tear Down America? Yes. Yes, it is.
Mr. Reagan.
Now, you've heard of inflation. You've probably heard of stagflation, but have you heard of shrinkflation? Yeah, shrinkflation. That is actually a thing. Now, this is where your candy bar or your burger or your orange juice gets smaller, but the price stays the same. It's sometimes difficult to notice these things because the packaging often remains the same size. But this happens all the time. It's happening everywhere right now. But the government insists that inflation is under control and that it's just temporary. But what do you think? Do you trust that this administration has anything under control? Exactly. But you know what? Noble Gold is ahead of the game here. They know that with a precious metals IRA, you can hedge against these rising prices, that you can retire without worrying about it. You'll keep up with the inflation that the folks in Washington are trying to pretend doesn't exist. And this month, to thank you and to get your precious metals project off to a flying start, Noble Gold is giving away this 5-ounce solid silver America the Beautiful bullion coin with every qualifying IRA and 401 rollover. This one is the Idaho Wilderness. Fantastic company. And in fact, somebody wrote in the comments the other day, they wrote, your Noble Gold advertisements are great. I invested with them, and he's very happy. So that's great. If you want to invest too, go to noblegoldinvestments.com or call them at 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347. During the Trump administration, the Washington Post kept a tally of things that Trump had said that they believed were lies. The tally eventually grew to over 30,000 in 4 years. To somebody who believes that the Washington Post has any kind of journalistic integrity, this would appear to be a pretty powerful indication that Trump is a total liar, a con artist, a fraud. But Trump didn't really lie at all, at least not that I'm aware of. He may have exaggerated a few times. He was certainly wrong about some things. Oftentimes the president would express his opinion, or he would speculate, and I can definitely remember him misspeaking at least once. But an outright lie? A lie is intentional. One must intend to deceive. That's what distinguishes a lie from a mistake or an exaggeration, or from just being inarticulate. Ironic that that came out a bit inarticulate. For example, one so-called lie that the Washington Post claimed Trump told was about his wife Melania. Trump said, "Our first lady has been a woman of great grace and beauty and dignity, and so popular with the people, so popular with the people." Now, the Washington Post cites a poll indicating that Democrats hated Melania, so she couldn't possibly be characterized as popular. Now, Melania's approval rating with Democrats was always going to be bad, but among Republicans, her approval rating was 84%. This indicates that somewhere around 30 million Americans have a positive perception of Melania Trump. That seems pretty popular to me, and some people really love Melania. They are true admirers, true fans. But even if the CNN poll that the Washington Post used as evidence to suggest that Melania was not actually popular, even if that did indicate it, even if it were true for some reason, what a despicable thing to say. What a despicable thing to call out as a lie. Trump's out there, he's just talking about how great his wife is, and the Washington Post has the gall to fact check that? Real classy, Washington Post. Real classy. First of all, they're wrong, okay? But secondly, you can see what they're doing with this list, right? This is not a deception by President Trump. This is not an indication that he's untrustworthy or a liar or a fraud or somehow trying to con everyday Americans. This is a guy bragging about his wife. Another quote from Trump that the Washington Post classified as a lie was when Trump said our agenda was not about right or left. It wasn't about Republican or Democrat, but about the good of the nation. Now, it's difficult to imagine how that could possibly be perceived as a lie. This is Trump's personal perspective. That's like if I said, I eat eggs, not because they taste good, but because they're healthy. And somebody comes in screaming that I was lying. That's not true. You do think they taste good. That is why you eat them. Like, how do you know? But according to the Washington Post, because Trump has at times viciously attacked Democrat politicians. He's viciously attacked Democrat political policies, and he's attacked specific Democrats in the past. Well, then he must be lying. But here's the thing. When Trump says our agenda was not about right or left, Republican or Democrat, but it was rather about the good of the nation, well, he's not saying that he thinks Republicans and Democrats are equally right about things, or that some Democrat politicians aren't corrupt. He's not saying anything like that. What he's saying is that his agenda was not a Republican agenda. It was not a right-wing agenda. He was not trying specifically with his agenda to push against the left or to push against Democrats. He's saying that his intention was to improve the nation. And for somebody to say that Trump's stated intention is a lie, well, that person is either a mind reader or they're just guessing. And guessing, well, that's not reporting. And so reporting that Trump is lying here, well, that in itself is a lie. And you will find this Washington Post list of so-called lies chock full of stuff like this. Things about which Trump never intended to deceive anyone. And yet there are over 30,000 of them listed as straight-up lies. But here's the irony. The left always accuses the right of doing precisely what the left themselves are doing. I've often said, if you want to know what crimes the Democrats are committing, just listen to what they're accusing Republicans of. And as we see our civil rights being stripped away day by day, I've noticed that the Biden administration has started lying a lot more than usual, and in far more obvious ways. And yet, where's the lie counter for the Biden administration? Huh? Washington Post? Oh, I guess you don't have an interest in tracking that, because that might make it a little bit more difficult to cover for them. Anyway, the lies that the Biden administration have come out with are not as simple as implying that Jill Biden is a medical doctor or saying that their political policies are intended to unify the country. No. These lies are far more sinister than that. You see, the Biden administration has been devastating our country. Now, Democrats hated Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," and that makes sense. Biden's slogan is "Build Back Better." And the goal of socialism is, of course, to build a better society, to build back better. But in order to build a socialist utopia, many socialists advocate tearing down any existing system. And in our case, that means tearing down capitalism, tearing down democracy, tearing down America. And so Biden's slogan may actually mean precisely the opposite of Trump's. Of course, Democrats hate the slogan, "Make America Great Again," because they want to tear down America. And that's really what Biden's slogan should be. But the reason I bring up all the lying is because the lies coming out of the Biden administration are not, as I said before, innocuous like those Trump was erroneously and absurdly accused of. No. They are far more insidious. And when the Democrats tell a lie, they genuinely intend to deceive Americans. And this does not appear to be an infrequent practice of the administration. In fact, it appears to be more often the case than not. Let me give you a few examples. 4.3 million people quit their jobs last month. That's 3% of the entire American workforce. This is a record. Never before in American history have so many people voluntarily quit their jobs all at once. And why? Well, it's pretty clear that at least part of the reason is Biden's Axine Ve Andate Me. But when asked about this was Jen Psaki's response.
Well, I would say that there are different circumstances, as you know, Josh, that for different people's lives. And there are certainly what we've seen through the pandemic on the positive note is that people have decided they have more choices that they can make. They have taken the period of the pandemic to maybe seek different forms of employment, different formats of that employment. Maybe some of it's remote working, maybe it's all remote working, maybe they're changing industries and career paths. And some of that, some of the numbers of people leaving their jobs is attributed to that. There are also conditions, so I can't give you the exact breakdown. I guess I'm just conveying that our economists feel that all are true. There are some conditions where women have left the workforce because of childcare needs, of the ones they can't afford. They don't have the ability to pay, and because of fears of going into companies or industries or jobs where they fear that there are not the conditions to be safe. So it depends, really, Josh. I think it's some are positive conditions and some are more because there haven't been steps put in place everywhere in every industry that can make people feel safe.
She says that the Americans who quit their jobs were those who have had revelations, epiphanies while working from home during the pandemic. People who've realized that, you know what, they're just not happy with their jobs anymore. And she also said that it was mothers who suddenly can't afford daycare for some reason. Now, this is not true, by the way, but evoking the idea of a poor mother, well, that's a very popular Democrat talking point. They know that they're going to get sympathy from women. Remember AOC's famous theory about why the crime rate in New York had skyrocketed?
They need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night.
Oh, yeah. It's just those moms stealing bread for their kids. But get this. Psaki then implied the only jobs that these moms with their kids in these expensive daycares could possibly apply for were like extremely dangerous jobs, and that this is why these moms weren't applying for work, because apparently all the job options in America are just so dangerous.
They fear that there are not the conditions to be safe.
Yeah, it's probably true. Every time I watch Deadliest Catch or Axemen or Ice Road Truckers, I'm just like, wow, look at all those brave mothers with their kids in daycare risking their lives to feed their families. And when you hear crap like this, you gotta ask yourself, is Jen Psaki really that stupid, or is she lying? And look, I don't think Jen Psaki is the sharpest tool in the shed, but she definitely knows the reason why 4.3 million people left their jobs in August. This is what we call a lie of omission, and it's very clearly an attempt to deceive the American people. And for the past year, we've had these extended unemployment payouts of $600 per week, and this is on top of local state benefits. And this has disincentivized a lot of people from going back to work after idiot governors and mayors shut down thousands of businesses during the pandemic and tons of people lost their jobs. Now, a lot of people make the point, if you're going to get paid more to stay at home, why would you ever go back to work? And that's obviously true, of course, but I think it's actually worse than that. I think a lot of people would stay home even with as little as half their regular pay. I mean, if you got $1,800 per week and then you get $900 a week to stay home, well, there's a lot of people out there who would rather smoke weed and play video games all day with $900 a week than work for 8 hours a day for $1,800 a week. But the Biden administration just repeatedly denies that their extended unemployment benefits have disincentivized any Americans from going back to work. Once again, here's Jen Psaki.
Fears of not being safe, sometimes childcare, and also the need to be paid a livable wage are all factors that are contributing.
I mean, this is strange because this clip was way back in May and she's using the exact same talking points. I don't know who told Psaki that working moms are the biggest segment of the population that have not yet gone back to work. But I mean, she's really leaning hard on that excuse, and she invokes the excuse of people are afraid of not being safe. Where the hell is she getting that data? How many Americans quit their jobs every year because it's not safe? And why is it such a huge problem now all of a sudden? Before the pandemic, I guess people were just too stupid to realize they were working in unsafe environments, but COVID suddenly woke everybody up, and now they're like, whoa, this office building is like super dangerous. I mean, this is a common tactic of Jen Psaki. She'll often ignore primary causes, which is almost always a Biden policy, and then she'll refer to a bunch of insignificant causes and she'll shift blame that way, away from the administration. No, Jen Psaki, childcare and dangerous cubicles are not stopping people from going back to work. The Biden unemployment checks are, and you know this. This, again, is a massive lie. Southwest airline employees left their jobs in droves because of the vaccine mandate in May. They stranded passengers across the country. The company eventually had to reverse their policy, and yet Psaki stated with absolute clarity and with absolute conviction that the Southwest Airlines issue had nothing to do with mandates.
I know there was a little hubbub over the course of the last few days about Southwest Airlines. We now know that some of those claims were absolutely false, and actually the issues were completely unrelated to vaccine mandates.
Another massive lie. Nurses are also quitting by the thousands because of the vaccine mandate maze. This has left hospitals understaffed all over the country. But if you ask Psaki about it, well, it's just because of the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
And do you know if this particular hospital might have been having staffing shortages because they have a vaccine mandate and maybe some folks have had to leave because they didn't want to get vaccinated?
I would love for you to account for me where that is the issue over more so than the number of unvaccinated who are filling emergency rooms, filling ICU beds. That is the problem in hospitals across the country.
The Biden administration recently said that they will spy on bank accounts with $600 in them, which is basically everyone. Then after the public said F right off, well, they've now changed it to inflows and withdrawals of $10,000 per year. But that's also everyone. Everyone who makes over $10,000 a year deposited in the same bank account, they'll have that bank account spied on. Now, apparently that isn't true if you're a wage earner that fills out a W-2 at your job.
So people who get W-2s, whether they are teachers, firefighters, employees at Fox News, anywhere where they may be getting a W-2, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about high net worth individuals who are not paying the taxes they owe, and that's what this policy would propose to address.
Okay, that sounds a little better if it's true. I mean, first of all, I don't believe her. I think she probably just made that up on the spot. I don't think that the W-2 thing is accurate. But as a YouTuber, I don't fill out a W-2. And I certainly make more than $10,000 a year. But Jen Psaki characterized those being spied on as high net worth individuals. And I am certainly not a high net worth individual. One of the things that makes America great is our adherence to the judicial philosophy of innocent until proven guilty. Well, not anymore, I guess. The gas prices have increased, and in turn, it's increased the price of just about everything else. There are a myriad of reasons for this, but a primary contributor has been Biden's pipeline closures and other supposedly green policies. But if you ask Psaki,
the American people are, of course, impacted by rising prices of gas in some parts of the country, not all.
There is no rise in gas prices. What are you guys talking about? That's a QAnite conspiracy theory. It's only just a few parts of the country. It's not everywhere. Back in Oregon, we actually used to have a term for this kind of political spin. What was it? Oh, yeah, bull. In another press conference, though, Jen Psaki does, in fact, tell the truth about gas prices.
Certainly, we all want to keep gasoline prices low, but the threat of the crisis, the climate crisis, certainly can't wait any longer.
Basically, the Biden administration doesn't really care if the gas prices increase in America because they think trying to reduce the CO2 emissions in order to virtue signal to their leftist friends around the world is far more important. The problem with this view is that with rising oil and gas prices, we see rising prices of literally everything else. We see everything costs money to ship. Plastics are all made with petroleum. If petroleum prices increase, so does the price of everything made with plastic. And if you make a lot of money, well, none of this really matters because the price increases will seem insignificant. But do you know who it does hurt? Low-income folks. The Democrats always hurt the very people that they pretend to want to help. Inflation is skyrocketing because they're printing money like crazy, devaluing the dollar. The Federal Reserve Bank is injecting $210 billion each month into the economy. This devalues our currency year over year. Now, the Biden administration is calling this temporary.
As our economy has come roaring back, we've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation. But that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and are expected to be temporary.
The Biden administration likes to use the word transitory, but economists and investors disagree.
Inflation also is much higher than expected and not as transitory.
There's also some evidence that they may not be so transitory, and that's a risk that I'm worried about.
I think anybody who looks at what's going on will tell you that unless you embrace the analytically meaningless phrase of persistently transitory, which I've heard, persistently transitory, this inflation round is not transitory. We should take it seriously, and central banks should move quickly to contain what could be something that ends up more than just an inflation problem, but a growth problem.
Now, the supply chain crisis isn't actually being lied about by the Biden administration, but the severity of the problem is being dismissed and even mocked.
Even as the sort of work to fight back against COVID proceeded, it was crystal clear that things were not improving on supply chain. People couldn't get dishwashers and furniture and treadmills delivered on time, not to mention all sorts of other things. So why is it...
The tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed.
Right, the problem.
Well, I think there's always been two kinds of Christmas shoppers. There's the ones who have all their list completed by Halloween, and then there's people like me who show up at the mall on Christmas Eve. If you're in that latter bucket, obviously there's going to be more challenges.
And finally, as we all know, our country has been inundated with immigrants illegally crossing the border unimpeded because of Biden's executive orders reversing Trump's border policies. Now, they know this is not popular, so they have been flying immigrant kids around the country in the dead of night trying to hide it from the American people. And then after they were caught, what do you think they did? Oh, that's right. They lied about it.
Well, I'm not sure that it's in the middle of the night, but let me tell you what's happening here.
2:13
It is our
a.m., 4:29 a.m.
well,
very early in the morning.
Here we are
pre-dawn.
talking about early flights, earlier than you might like to take a flight.
Psaki says illegal immigrants aren't intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time.
They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time.
I'm sorry, what? That one's so absurd not even leftists can believe it. It should also be noted that if they're not intending to stay, they're not asylees and they should be ushered back over the border. The truth is, Psaki knows these people are not eligible for asylum and that they should all be arrested and removed from the country. That's the law. But it's not the Biden policy. And we find that a lot with this administration. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about the law. It's about the policy. Honestly, Jen Psaki is the most straight-faced liar I have ever seen in my life. This administration lied about COVID coming from the lab. They lied about masks. They didn't work, and then they did work. Then you need 3. They lied about white supremacy being the greatest domestic threat in the country. They lied about January 6th. After the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Biden administration abandoned American citizens, Joe Biden Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, came out and said that most of the Americans left in Afghanistan want to be there.
Part of the challenge with fixing a precise number is that there are longtime residents of Afghanistan who have American passports and who are trying to determine whether or not they wanted to leave. For many, it's a painful choice. If an American in Afghanistan tells us that they want to stay for now, and then in a week or a month or a year, they reach out and say, I've changed my mind, we will help them leave.
Whether that was a lie or not, I'm not going to comment. I'll let you guys make up your own minds on that one. Now, the Biden administration could not get away with all of their absurd lying without the complicity of the leftist mainstream media. And in some ways, the media is even worse. The media lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and Joe Biden's corruption. They lied about Trump throughout his administration, even carrying on the Russian collusion lie, basically through to the end of his presidency. George Stephanopoulos just came out with a special covering the infamous Steele dossier, which turned out to be complete bunk. I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan to watch it. Great job, George. Great reporting. Way to get to the bottom of the dossier situation. What is it now, 2 years, 3 years since those of us on the right were reporting on this? When are you going to finally come around to exposing Joe's corruption? Probably after he's dead. Katie Couric just admitted that she edited out Ruth Bader Ginsburg's criticism of Colin Kaepernick in order to, quote, protect her.
Talking about journalism, and this is very much a journalism story, you did make an eye-opening revelation about an interview you did with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You decided to leave out newsworthy comments that she made on the subject of kneeling during the national anthem.
Yeah.
How did you justify that? It violates a cardinal rule of journalism.
Well, I think what people don't realize is we make editorial decisions like that all the time. And I chose to talk about this and put it in the book for a discussion. I mentioned that it was a conundrum that I asked Justice Ginsburg about Colin Kaepernick and taking a knee and how she felt about that.
I think it's really dumb of them. Would I arrest them for doing it? No. I think it's dumb and disrespectful. I would have the same answer if you asked me about flag burning.
There's this effort to craft the interview so that it fits a narrative. Ginsburg had many traditional values. I'm not surprised at all by what she said. What's fascinating is this is occurring at a time of advocacy journalism, where more journalists are saying that they need to frame news to achieve some social or political agenda. Anyone who considers himself a journalist would never have taken this type of act. But you have another journalist who cited that she consulted with, and he just said, well, she probably didn't understand the question. Really? It sounds like she understood the question.
Well, it's also, I find it incredibly insulting to a feminist icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why does she need protected by Katie Couric? I'm pretty sure Ruth Bader Ginsburg was very well aware of her feelings and her views, and she knew exactly the impact that they would have.
Joe Rogan just blasted Sanjay Gupta because CNN lied about ivermectin over and over and over again, to which Sanjay Gupta merely replied, yeah, they probably shouldn't have done that.
We should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing that's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine. Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize.
winning the Nobel Prize in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is.
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like I feel like I'm missing.
Do you think that's a problem that your news network lies?
Well, I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
they
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch
horse.
of other
if
medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking it, the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before coming on your podcast.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
You watched?
I watched.
You watched.
You are the chief medical correspondent at CNN. This is your responsibility. What a friggin' coward. Takes zero responsibility. Pretends that he didn't know that like a gazillion so-called journalists were claiming that ivermectin was merely horse dewormer. What a piece of shit. Honestly, Joe Biden should have been harder on him. The other day, Biden's approval numbers dropped yet again. Now this is encouraging. It indicates that America is waking up to the reality of what the Democrat Party stands for, what Biden's administration is trying to do. And for those of you out there who are wondering, no, there will be no rebound to those approval numbers. They will just keep sinking. You know how I know that? Because I know why those approval numbers are sinking. Many pundits will say that it's because of Afghanistan or gas prices or COVID or the supply chain or some other crisis. No, it's none of those things. They contribute, sure, but those are not the root causes, to use a Kamala Harris term. The primary problem is Obama's direction. Now, I've discussed this before on the channel, but I think Obama is behind the curtain pulling the strings. And many years ago, Dinesh D'Souza produced a film called 2012 Obama's America. And in that film, I believe Dinesh had Obama figured out. Obama, he believed, had no interest in improving America. His father was an anti-colonialist. Today, anti-colonialists tend to hate America. America is perceived as the great colonial power of the 21st century. And so, taking the dreams from his father, Obama himself became an anti-colonialist, an anti-American, a socialist. And as I mentioned before, Build Back Better is just code for build a socialist utopia. And in order to build a socialist utopia, you have to burn the current system to the ground. Now, I genuinely believe that Obama is trying to destroy the country. All of Biden's policies indicate this, and it's working. All Biden's policies have been thus far damaging to the country, and the country is taking notice. When Psaki says inflation is a good thing, she's not fooling anyone. The Democrats believe that American voters are fundamentally stupid, and that, I believe, will be their downfall. They're so damn cocky. They've got such an elitist, narcissistic, megalomaniacal view that they're unable to comprehend the truth of what's going on in America. As they plot to destroy the country and as they implement policies to destroy the country, and as the horrific effects of those policies are inevitably observed by everyday Americans, those approval numbers, well, they're just going to fall and fall and fall. I do think it takes time for some people to finally recognize what Democrats are doing, and there are many who will never fully accept it. But over time, slowly, most Americans will eventually figure out that the Biden administration is not good for this country. Well over half the country gets it now, but at the current rate, Biden's disapproval numbers will be at 60% by April of 2022. And that's probably a low estimate. Polling in America these days is notoriously biased toward Democrats. Biden is losing support fast, and his policies are never going to adjust in a way that will stop the bleeding, because the goal of Democrats is no longer to be popular. It's to build back better. It's to tear down America. Well, that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
This is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, therein lies the road to war. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery.